Okay, let's dive into one of the most extreme and ambitious social experiments in modern history.
We're talking about a moment during the French Revolution.
A really intense moment
Yeah.
when the leaders decided they weren't just changing the government. They were going to change what people believed, how they worshiped, and even how they told time.
It was a total cultural scorched earth strategy. The mission was to wipe out every single trace of the Catholic Church's influence on French society.
And to understand why they went so far, you have to
Mhm.
look beyond just religion, right?
Yeah.
You have to look at power and, well, money.
Exactly. The core problem was that the church was tied, completely intertwined with the old system, the monarchy.
So if you accept the church, you accept the king.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Because of that long-held idea of the divine right of kings, the revolution couldn't really succeed until that whole idea was just dismantled.
And then there's the sheer wealth gap.
A massive one. The revolutionaries saw the church as this giant, privileged institution that owned huge amounts of the best land in France, untaxed, while the average person was struggling.
Which flew in the face of all those Enlightenment ideas they were fighting for. Rational thinking, equality.
So the first move was financial, but the goal was absolutely political.
They went straight for the assets, didn't they? No easing into it.
Immediately, the state just seized massive amounts of church-owned land. And this wasn't just spite, it was practical.
France was bankrupt.
Completely, from helping out with the American Revolution and years of bad royal spending. So they used the seized land as collateral for a new kind of paper money, the assignats.
That's a brilliant move, actually.
Mm,
Brutal, but brilliant.
it is. You strip the church of its power base and solve your national debt crisis all at once.
But they didn't just stop with ownership. They went after the physical symbols of religion.
Yes. The idea was that you could walk down a street and have zero visual reminders that the old faith had ever even existed.
So churches and monasteries were shut down.
Shut down, repurposed, you name it. These incredibly beautiful historic cathedrals were turned into practical secular spaces, warehouses for grain, meeting halls for revolutionary committees.
Just imagine that. Your local church, the center of community life for centuries, is suddenly a grain silo.
That was the point. Shock and awe. Monks and nuns were ordered to dissolve their orders to go back to being private citizens.
And what about all the valuables inside? The gold, the silver?
All melted down. Of course, some of it was used for coins to help the treasury. But think about the church bells. This is where it gets really symbolic.
Go on.
They weren't just silenced. They were taken down, sometimes from hundreds of feet up, and melted into bronze for cannons.
So they're literally turning the sound of the old faith.
Into military power for the new state, turning prayers into cannons to fight the enemies of the Republic. It's an incredible symbol of the shift in power.
Okay, so once the buildings are neutralized, they shift focus to the people who ran them, the clergy.
Yes, and here the government tries a kind of spiritual hostile takeover. They created something called the Civil Constitution of the Clergy.
And the key part of that was an oath.
Right, an oath of loyalty. Every priest had to swear allegiance to the revolutionary government above the Pope.
Which must have created an instant split.
A huge one. The priests who took the oath became the constitutional clergy, and those who refused,
They were the enemy.
they were called refractory priests. And yes, they were immediately seen as counter-revolutionaries, enemies of the state. For the revolutionaries, if your loyalty was divided, it was treason.
And the pressure to conform, it wasn't subtle, was it?
Not at all. It went beyond just signing a piece of paper. Clergy were forced to stop wearing their religious robes in public.
They wanted them to just blend in, look like every other citizen.
And in a really direct assault on tradition, some priests were even pressured, or in some cases forced, to marry.
To prove they were rejecting celibacy and were fully part of the new society.
Exactly. And if you refused all this, if you were a priest who tried to keep holding secret services for people who still believed,
You were in incredible danger.
especially during the height of the violence, the terror, holding a secret mass could get you imprisoned or even executed. So many of the most faithful leaders just fled the country.
So, to really erase the old ways, they realized they had to change the very rhythm of daily life. And nothing dictates that rhythm like time itself.
This is where their ambition just goes off the charts, the revolutionary calendar.
They didn't just tweak the old calendar, they completely wiped it clean.
Year zero was no longer the birth of Christ. It was now September 1792, the date the French Republic was founded. History literally started over.
And the months themselves, they were renamed, weren't they?
Yeah, and the names were actually quite poetic. They were based on nature. Nivose for snowy, ventose for windy, germinal for bedding.
Tying time to the seasons in agriculture, not to saints or religious feasts.
But the biggest change, the most disruptive one, was the week. They got rid of the 7-day week entirely.
Because the 7-day week comes from the biblical story of creation.
Precisely. So they replaced it with a 10-day week called a decade. So each month had 3 of these 10-day weeks.
And the main goal there was to get rid of Sunday.
Sunday was gone. No more Christian day of rest and worship. Now, you worked 9 days straight before you got a single day off.
Imagine the fatigue, but also just the social chaos.
They were forcing pure logic onto a deeply ingrained part of life. And for a short time, they even tried to decimalize the day itself.
You're kidding. Nope.
They proposed a 10-hour day, with each hour having 100 minutes and each minute having 100 seconds, all to match the decimal system.
That sounds impossible.
It was. It proved way too chaotic and was abandoned pretty quickly, even by the most die-hard revolutionaries.
Okay, so beyond time, they also went after physical space. You mentioned street names earlier.
Oh, yeah. This was a massive, sweeping effort. Think about how many streets in any old European city are named after saints. Saint-Germain, Saint-Michel.
All of them.
They went through and renamed thousands of streets, squares, even entire cities to strip out any reference to a saint or a king.
So a town like, say, Saint-Denis, what would it be called?
It might be renamed Armsville, which means weapon town, or maybe it's renamed after a philosopher like Rousseau. The goal was to cleanse the map.
So you wouldn't even see a religious reminder just walking to the market.
The entire geography of France was being rewritten to reflect revolutionary values.
So once they've cleared the stage of the old religion, they realize there's a vacuum. They need to replace it with something.
And this leads to the first state-sponsored secular replacement, the cult of reason.
This sounds like pure Enlightenment philosophy turned into a religion.
That's exactly what it was. It was explicitly atheistic. It argued that human logic, empirical evidence, should be the only guide for society. The human mind was the only god you needed.
And the high point of this was the Festival of Reason in late 1793.
An incredible spectacle. They took Notre Dame Cathedral, the very heart of French Catholicism, and renamed it the Temple of Reason.
And instead of a religious ceremony?
They put a local actress on a throne to represent the goddess of reason and held this huge procession. It was a very clear, very visual message. Human intellect is now in charge.
But not everyone was on board with total atheism, right? What about Maximilien Robespierre?
Ah, yeah. Robespierre, the main figure of the terror, was worried. He thought pure atheism could lead to moral chaos.
He thought people needed something, a higher power.
He felt that for the Republic to be virtuous, people needed to believe in a higher power and the immortality of the soul, some sense of cosmic justice.
So he creates his own version.
Exactly. He introduces the cult of the supreme being. This was basically deism as a state religion. It acknowledged a godlike figure, but got rid of all the Christian rituals and saints.
And he launched it with his own big festival, didn't he?
A massive one. He acted as a sort of high priest, publicly setting fire to cardboard figures that represented atheism and egoism. It was all about promoting civic virtue.
But with all this state power behind it, the whole de-Christianization campaign still faced huge resistance.
That's a crucial point. This was mostly popular in the cities, especially Paris. In the countryside, the resistance was fierce.
Because the local church was everything.
It was where you got an education, where you got charity if you were poor, where all your family traditions, your baptisms, your weddings, your funerals happened.
And trying to tear that down sparked actual civil war.
Most famously in the Vendée region, yes. But resistance also took quieter forms. Secret masses were held at night in barns or forests.
And women played a huge role in that, didn't they?
A major role. Protecting priests, hiding religious objects, and just making sure the faith was passed on to their children, despite what the government wanted.
So what happened to these state-sponsored cults? The cult of reason, the supreme being?
These just imploded almost as fast as they appeared. The enthusiasm completely vanished after Robespierre was executed.
So once the threat of the guillotine was gone,
People just went back to their old traditions. The government realized these abstract philosophical ideas were too hard and too expensive to force on people.
and you can't really trade centuries of belief for a concept like logic.
Exactly. And on a very practical level, the 10-day week was just deeply unpopular with workers, so Sunday was quietly brought back. The needs of the economy and, frankly, social peace won out over ideology.
Which brings us to Napoleon Bonaparte, who was always a pragmatist.
The ultimate pragmatist. When he took power, he knew that religious division was making France unstable. He knew most people were still Catholic, and to rule effectively, he needed them on his side.
So he made a deal.
He made the final deal. The Concordat of 1801, signed with the Pope, it officially recognized Catholicism as the religion of the majority of French people.
And in return.
In return, the church agreed not to try and reclaim all that land the state had seized years before. It was a massive compromise on their part.
But the state still kept some control.
Oh, yes. The state now paid the clergy's salaries. So the church was back, it was protected, but it was essentially an employee of the state. Secular law remained supreme.
What this whole chaotic decade really showed is the absolute limit of political power, isn't it?
It is. Even a government as radical and, frankly, as violent as the one during the French Revolution couldn't just create a new culture out of thin air.
It's a powerful reminder that culture and tradition are often far more enduring than the government trying to change them. The revolution changed the nation, but it couldn't fundamentally change the people.
Indeed. It really leaves you wondering, if the most powerful political movement in European history couldn't erase tradition, what can?
That is a fascinating question for you to think about. We'll see you next time.